Intro. The discovery. I found a woman's handwriting in my husband's coat pocket. I had such a wonderful time today. See you next Thursday. There was even a little heart drawn at the end. 43 years. I had been married to this man for 43 years. I spent 15 years caring for his bedridden mother until my back gave out. When his business failed, I got down on my knees and begged my own father for money. I woke up at 4 in the morning to work double shifts at the diner just to put our kids through college. The only thing that kept me going through all of it was believing that this man, my husband, would never betray me. But I was wrong. My hands were shaking. No, my whole body was shaking. I sank to the floor right there in the bedroom. I don't know how long I sat there. An hour? 2 hours? I didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. I learned that day that when the shock is deep enough, you can't even cry. Instead, I kept thinking one thing over and over. 43 years. What did I do? For 43 years? I ruined my back. I ruined my knees. I gave up my dreams. And this is what I get? That day, for the first time in 43 years, I lied to my husband. And for the first time in my life, I took a trip by myself. But here's the thing. The man I met on that trip, of all people, it had to be him. My husband's best friend from high school, and the man who had asked me out 43 years ago, before I chose my husband instead. Was this fate playing a cruel joke? Or was it all part of someone's plan? Chapter 1. A Morning of Betrayal. My name is Margaret Wilson. Most people call me Maggie. I'm 68 years old. I got married at 25, 43 years ago. My husband, Richard, Rick, to everyone who knows him. He was 3 years older than me. Tall, and quite handsome back then. I fell for him at first sight. To be honest, another man had asked me out first. Eddie Thompson, Rick's best friend from high school. Eddie was a good man too. But my heart didn't go to him. It just went to Rick. I can't explain why. A week later, Rick asked me out himself. His voice was shaking. His eyes were nervous. And he asked if I would go steady with him. I said yes immediately. That was 43 years ago. I don't even know how 43 years went by. 6 months after we got married, my mother-in-law had a stroke. I took care of her. For 15 years, there was no honeymoon phase. Nothing. After she passed, Rick started a business. It went bankrupt. In 3 years, we were $200,000 in debt. I went to my father. I got down on my knees. I begged him to help us. Promised I would pay back every cent. My father gave me his entire life savings, every last dollar. It took me 10 years to pay it back. I worked the early shift at a diner starting at 4 in the morning. I cleaned houses in the afternoon. I came home and made dinner for the kids every night. For 43 years, I never once lived as Maggie. To my mother-in-law, I was Rick's wife. To my husband, I was Honey. To my kids, I was Mom. To my grandchildren, I was Grandma. To the neighbors, I was Mrs. Wilson. Where did Maggie go? Let me tell you about Maggie. At 23, Maggie was studying vocal performance in college. Her professors said she had a beautiful voice, real talent. Her dream was to perform on stage someday. But then I got married, and my mother-in-law had her stroke. She told me that a proper wife doesn't go around singing. She said it was embarrassing for the family. Rick agreed with her. He said we might have children soon, and I needed to focus on the home. So I quit my voice lessons. And for 43 years, I never sang again. Not once. That morning, I opened my closet. There was a lavender dress I hadn't worn in over 20 years. My daughter had bought it for me once, but I always thought I was too old for something like that. That day, I put it on. I looked in the mirror. A stranger stared back at me. Maggie, who are you? What have you done with 68 years of your life? Chapter 2: A Twist of Fate. As I left the house, my heart was pounding. My first trip alone. My first lie to my husband. I should have felt guilty. But strangely, I didn't. I felt free. I arrived at the meeting point for the tour bus. People were already gathering. Most of them were around my age. 60s and 70s. Some couples. Some groups of friends. But no one else seemed to be alone like me. Then the tour guide picked up her microphone. She announced that anyone traveling solo would be paired up with a partner through a random drawing. I drew a slip of paper. Number 7. The guide asked number 7 to raise their hand. A man in the back of the bus raised his hand. When I saw his face, I nearly stopped breathing. Eddie Thompson, my husband's best friend since high school, a man I had known for over 40 years, and the man who had asked me out 43 years ago, before I turned him down and chose Rick. What in the world? Why him? Of all people, why did it have to be him? I was frozen. I couldn't move a single step. Eddie looked just as shocked. His face went pale. I got on the bus. Seat number 7, right next to Eddie. It was so awkward. I could barely sit down. Eddie spoke first. He called me Mrs. Wilson. He asked what I was doing there. I wanted to ask him the same thing. He said he was just bored. He wanted to be alone. For a while, a long, uncomfortable silence hung between us. Eddie asked carefully if Rick knew I was there. I told him no. I told him Rick thought I was at a doctor's appointment. Something flickered in Eddie's eyes, like he wanted to say something, but was holding back. I asked him a favor. Just for today, could we pretend we didn't know each other? Eddie nodded slowly. Then he asked carefully if, just for today, he could call me Maggie instead of Mrs. Wilson. Maggie. When I heard that name, my heart did something strange. It had been 43 years since anyone called me Maggie. After I got married, I was always Mrs. Wilson to Rick's friends, every single one of them. But hearing Maggie from Eddie's lips, it felt like going back in time to 23-year-old Maggie, the girl who studied music, dreamed of the stage, and wasn't afraid of anything. Chapter 3: A Day's Journey. The first stop was a pottery workshop. The instructor said we worked together like an old married couple. We both turned red. Eddie asked if I was okay missing that phone call earlier. I told him again, just for today, to call me Maggie, not Mrs. Wilson. Eddie's voice trembled when he replied. He said it had been 43 years since he called me Maggie. My chest felt warm. I asked myself what this feeling was. The second stop was lunch at a local farmer's market. We sat down at a food stall. Eddie asked if I liked spicy food. I told him I loved it, but Rick hated spicy food. So I hadn't had any in years. Eddie smiled and told me to enjoy it today. Rick wasn't here. I took a bite. It was so good. It had been so long since I ate something I actually wanted. Eddie watched me and said he had never seen me smile like that before. He asked if I had always smiled that beautifully. I felt my face turn red again. Over lunch, we talked about our lives. I asked him why he never got married. Eddie was quiet for a long time. Then he said something he probably shouldn't have. He said there was someone he could never forget, someone who had taken up space in his heart for too long. I was stunned. Could he mean for 43 years? Eddie continued. He said when Rick told him he was going to ask me out, Eddie wished him luck. He figured, since I had already turned him down, the right thing to do was step aside for his friend. But his heart wouldn't let go. He couldn't force himself to stop feeling what he felt. 43 years. This man had lived 43 years like that. That's when I saw him. Across the market, a familiar face. Robert, Rick's younger brother. Oh no, why was he here? Without thinking, I grabbed Eddie's arm and pulled him into a narrow alley. The alley was so tight. We were pressed close together. My heart was about to burst. All I could think about was whether Robert would pass by without seeing us. Eddie and I locked eyes. Our faces were inches apart. In that moment, I thought about the college festival 43 years ago. Eddie standing there with a bouquet of flowers. What if I had chosen Eddie back then? The thought flashed through my mind. The footsteps faded away. He was gone. I finally let myself breathe. But my heart wouldn't calm down. Chapter 4: Calligraphy and Tears. The third stop was a calligraphy class. The instructor told us today's theme was a message to yourself. I picked up the brush. My hand was shaking. When was the last time I held a brush? Maybe the guest book at my mother-in-law's funeral. I couldn't remember anything else. A message to myself. What would I even write? For 43 years, I had never said anything to myself. I had always lived for everyone else. I lifted the brush, and I wrote, one letter at a time. I'm sorry, Maggie. When I finished writing, the tears came. I tried to hold them back, but I couldn't. It was like 43 years of pain came flooding out all at once. The day I gave up singing. The day I hurt my back taking care of my mother-in-law. The day I knelt before my father begging for money. The mornings I cried while getting ready for work at 4 a.m. And yesterday, finding that note in my husband's pocket. All of it hit me at once. Tears fell onto the paper and made the ink bleed. Eddie quietly handed me his handkerchief. I took it and cried. I didn't even care how embarrassed I should have been. I just cried. I cried for a long time. Eddie sat beside me and didn't say a word. He just waited. When I finally stopped, Eddie spoke. He said he still remembered my voice. The song I sang at the college festival, Amazing Grace. He said he had never forgotten it in 43 years. I started crying again. Someone had remembered my singing for 43 years. My own husband didn't even remember that I used to sing. Eddie asked why I stopped singing. He said it was such a waste to let that voice go. I told him I couldn't sing after I got married. My mother-in-law didn't approve. Eddie asked if I couldn't start again now. I didn't know what to say. Chapter 5: The Confession at the Winery. The final stop was a winery. We did a wine tasting on a terrace overlooking the vineyards. I don't usually drink. Rick hates alcohol, so there was never any in our house. But that day, I drank. 1 glass, then 2. The sun was setting. The sky was beautiful. I watched the sunset and wondered when the last time I had seen one was. For 43 years, I was always in the kitchen at this hour, making dinner. Eddie spoke. He said today wasn't a coincidence. My heart dropped. Eddie explained. He said Rick had called him. Rick had told him I would be on this bus today. Rick said he thought I had found evidence of his affair, and that I would probably take a trip alone. So he asked Eddie to come and keep an eye on me. I felt numb. My husband knew everything? Was this whole day staged? Eddie said the meeting was arranged by Rick. But everything I felt today was real. My smile was real. My tears were real. And his feelings were real too. Then Eddie added something else. He said Rick wasn't having an affair. I couldn't breathe. Eddie explained. That handwriting, it was from Rick's nurse. A nurse? Eddie's voice trembled. He said Rick had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 6 months ago. I dropped my wine glass. It shattered on the ground. Eddie continued. The Thursday meetings weren't with another woman. They were at the hospital. Chemotherapy. The doctors said he had 3 months at most. I collapsed onto the terrace. All this time, I thought he was cheating. I had been resenting him, cursing our 43 years together. I asked through my sobs why he didn't tell me. Why he suffered alone. Eddie said Rick made him promise not to say anything. Rick wanted to spend his remaining time living normally, without me worrying. I wailed. 43 years of marriage. And I never knew my husband's heart. I didn't know he was sick. I didn't know how much he loved me. Chapter 6 Eddie's Choice. Eddie told me something else. He said Rick had made him a promise. Like a final wish. Rick had said that when he was gone, I would be alone. He asked Eddie to look after me. I looked up. Rick had really said that? Eddie nodded. He said Rick knew. He knew that Eddie had carried feelings for me for 43 years. Rick knew? Eddie said yes. And Rick had remained his friend anyway. That was the kind of man Rick was. I cried even harder. Eddie said he had come today to confess his feelings. 43 years of love, and Rick had given him permission. He thought he could finally tell me. But watching me cry, he said he understood now. For 43 years, I had never once looked at him. I had only ever seen Rick. I couldn't say anything. I felt so guilty, so sorry. Eddie smiled sadly. He said it was okay. Just knowing for sure was enough. He told me to take good care of Rick. He said I should ask Rick to call me Maggie, not honey. He said Rick probably wanted that too. On the bus ride home, Eddie handed me a small box. He said he bought it without telling Rick. I opened it. It was a music box. I wound it up, and a melody started to play. Amazing Grace. He told me to listen to it when things got hard. To remember when I was still just Maggie. I held the music box tight. Eddie said one last thing. He told me not to regret turning him down 43 years ago. He said Rick was a much better man than he could ever be. Chapter 7 Coming Home. I stood in front of our house. I was afraid to open the door. I had opened this door thousands of times in 43 years. But that day was different. Behind that door was my sick husband. My husband who had only 3 months left. I took a deep breath. Don't cry. Pretend you don't know. That's what Rick wants. I opened the door. Rick was sitting on the couch, watching TV. He turned his head when I came in. I looked at his face again. So thin. Dark circles under his eyes. Pale lips. How did I not notice? How did I not see how sick he was? Rick asked how my checkup went. I steadied my voice and said everything was fine. Nothing to worry about. Rick said that was good. I started walking toward the kitchen, then stopped. I sat down next to my husband. And I took his hand. For the first time in 43 years, I reached for his hand first. Rick looked at me, surprised. He asked what was wrong. I told him nothing was wrong. I just wanted to hold his hand. After 43 years, his eyes glistened with tears. I was about to cry too, but I held it back. I asked if I could start calling him Rick instead of Honey. We had been married 43 years, and I wanted to use his name. He looked at me for a long moment. Then, in a trembling voice, he asked if he could call me Maggie too. I said of course. He said thank you, Maggie. That night, we fell asleep holding hands. For the first time in 43 years. Chapter 8. The final 3 months. For the next 3 months, I pretended not to know. Every Thursday when Rick said he was going to his hiking club, I told him to have a good time. Even though I knew he was really going to chemotherapy. When he couldn't finish his meals, I said he must not be hungry today. Even though I knew it was the cancer. When he was too tired and napped during the day, I asked if he was feeling okay. Even though I knew everything. Pretending was so much harder than I ever imagined. Every night, I cried alone in the bathroom. But I made sure we did everything we could in the time we had left. We watched TV together. His favorite old westerns. We took walks together, slowly, at his pace. We even went out for spicy food. He hated spicy food, but when I said I wanted some, he came with me anyway. He said he never knew I liked spicy food. I told him I didn't know either. It had been so long since I let myself have any. Rick said he should have done more for me. He said he was sorry. I also started taking voice lessons again. I told Rick I wanted to learn to sing again. I told him it had been my dream when I was young. I wanted to try, even now. Rick looked at me for a long time. Then he said okay. He said I should do what I wanted. He said he had held me back too much. I told him he hadn't held me back. He said yes he had. He said he listened to his mother too much. He said he was sorry, Maggie. I cried in the bathroom again that night. 2 months in, Rick collapsed. The hospital said there was nothing more they could do. I brought him home. I told him to stay home with me instead of the hospital. I told him I would take care of everything. In the last week, Rick slept most of the time. Sometimes he would open his eyes and hold my hand. He would say my name. Maggie. I would tell him I was right there. He would say he was sorry. He wished he had loved me better. I told him I knew. I knew everything. He asked me to tell Eddie thank you. I was surprised. I asked if he had known all along. He said he knew everything. He knew from the moment I came home that day. He said my eyes looked different. Clear. It was the first time in 43 years he had seen my eyes like that. On the last day, Rick held my hand and spoke. Maggie, thank you. For 43 years. I told him thank you too. He closed his eyes. And he didn't open them again. Epilogue 1 year later. It's been 1 year since Rick passed. Eddie came to the funeral. He laid white roses by Rick's photo and looked at it for a long time. Then he turned to me. He said I had given Rick a good send-off. I told him it was because of him. I told him those last 3 months were happier than all the years before. In this past year, I've changed a lot. I kept going to my voice lessons. My teacher says I have a lovely voice for my age. Every Saturday, I teach singing at the senior center. Volunteer work. Living alone is lonely, but it's not as scary as it used to be. Today, we had a recital at the senior center. For the first time in 68 years, I stood on a stage. I sang Amazing Grace, the same song Eddie heard me sing 43 years ago. From the stage, I looked out at the audience. In the very back row, Eddie was sitting there, wiping his tears and clapping. After the performance, I stepped off the stage. Eddie came up to me. He said it was just like 43 years ago. I told him my voice wasn't as good as it used to be. I'm old now. He said no. He said it was even better. Eddie asked quietly if I was okay without Rick. I smiled. I told him I was okay. I told him Rick left me in good hands. Eddie looked embarrassed. He asked if I meant him. I asked who else it could be. We're still just friends. Or maybe not even friends. Just two people who know each other. The man who waited 43 years. And the woman who never knew. I don't know what will happen next. But that's okay. Because now, I can finally live as Maggie. When I got home, I wound up the music box. Amazing Grace filled the room. Outside the window, the sun was setting. For 43 years, I never watched the sunset. But now I see it every day. Rick, can you hear me? Thank you for sending me that man. And thank you for everything. For 43 years, I'm going to live as Maggie now. Just like you wanted. The music box stopped. I wound it again. I'll listen to this song tomorrow. And the day after. And the day after that. Every day I live as Maggie, this melody will be with me.